Hello, welcome to another video. This video is going to be trying to explain the psychology of guys that are into submission, a lot of them, and the cause and effect of the situation, the current situation for many people. So to start, a lot of us guys in Western society grow up with the message that guys are supposed to be dominant. Even though that's not relevant to masculinity, they combine that masculinity and dominance are synonymous terms, which they're not. And so what happens, what I see what happens for some of these guys from the videos that I've seen of guys submitting and letting toxic women dominate them publicly and humiliate them publicly without putting their foot down, without saying, hey, I will not be spoken to that. I will not be spoken like that. I'm worthy, that is inappropriate. That is not okay. Don't talk to me like that. Or please don't talk to me like that, whatever. Instead, they'll allow the woman to publicly humiliate them, to knock them down. And some guys, it might be that that's what they're going into doing that, which is very sad because it's even if it's consensual in that case, it's actually most likely unhealthy for them to do that for their self-esteem and for their shame that they're dealing with. So my experience is I grew up in a dysfunctional home, and a lot of people grow up in dysfunctional homes, and the male that is into being sexually submissive naturally will grow up in a dysfunctional home and develop and have what's called developmental arrest. And each person will be different because of their nature and to the level of the abuse and the neglect that they've been through. And then, of course, just their environment overall. It all plays a factor, but the home is the primary factor. So you then have this developmental arrest. You then have this lack, this shortage that they were supposed to receive from their caretakers of love, of respect, of attention, of empathy, of things of those natures. And when that is arrested, when that is neglected, when there is abuse going on, what happens a lot of times is what's called developing toxic shame. And when these guys develop toxic shame, at their core, they feel that I am not worthy. So now imagine you have a guy like, I am not good enough. Just like, I am not worthy of love. I am not worthy of respect. I am not worthy of acceptance, whatever it is. I am faulted. I'm like a false, I'm a fraud. I'm not, I'm all these different things that aren't healthy because of the home a lot of times. So that's a start. Let's start with that. Now, imagine you have a guy who's submissive, who's naturally submissive, and then he looks out in the world and he sees how toxic patriarchy dominates still a lot of Western society, and he's into being male sexually submissive. That just exacerbates his shame, his toxic shame, his one of his core wounds, if not his main wound of that toxic shame, and he does not feel good. He won't, he'll isolate himself because he's been hurt from the home that he came from, because people have betrayed him over and over again, because maybe once or twice or a few times where he might have expressed it, he was instantly turned down. So that's the situation. And now in the modern times, you have this guy who's in this pain. He's lonely. He feels bad about himself. He feels unworthy. And then he has a computer or a phone when desire hits. So he turns to pornography, not only because of all of a sudden he has this desire, but also because he's in a lot of pain and he doesn't think it's possible to find women into femdom because he sees how macho and all that stuff is shown in the real world. So, and outside world, in the toxic society that we live in. And so here he is watching the pornography because there's no alternative in his head, or there is, but it's a very slim alternative. And then now he's hypersexual. Now he has this unworthiness shame, and he's hypersexual. Now he comes of age, so whatever age that is, when he starts to want to live his desires, if he has the ability to. And he finds to his dismay that instead of finding women that are into it, that he finds attractive, he finds endless women, endless women, just doing sexual work and quote unquote catering, but essentially thirst trapping the guys who've been trapped by society into pornography, who've been warped by their families and warped by society's norms, who's misdirected, misguided, and fed a lie, and he has literally like nowhere to go. So he has this hypersexual thing. He's been told that the messages of a guy to be vulnerable, to be sad, to be jealous, to be whatever the types of, not whatever, like those are very common ones. That's not quote unquote being a guy. So now, and to be macho. So now you have this guy who's naturally gentle. He likes to be objectified. He wants to be dominated by a woman. He wants her to take control as like to just take the lead and do as she pleases within his limits, essentially. But he's stuck again. And all he gets fed are thirst traps for the most part. And then he has no option, or he feels he has no option, but to oblige, when really he wants nothing more than to be loved for who he is. He wants nothing more than to have a romantic relationship with femdom, with female domination. But he doesn't see a way out, and he's not even aware of that. He's suppressed his need for love so deep that it's buried inside so deep, and he's just running from his pain on a subconscious level. And he then uses the femdom. He then uses his sex drive, his super strong sex drive, which is now hypersexualized, with femdom, and women continue to just monopolize on his shame and on his loneliness and on his unworthiness wounds. And some of them know that. And if for those who do, again, that's a very sad thing. But then women on the flip side complain that, oh, all guys want is sex. All guys want is, they're just objectifying me. They're just doing this. They're just doing that. I can tell you from the abuse that I've experienced as a child, there was a part of me that just had a violent part inside of me from that abuse that I have experienced. And I took it out on in different ways. Luckily, I didn't harm anyone, but I did take it out. And I remember just thinking, like, where is this coming from? This is not like me. This is not in my nature. And you have these guys that have been unfortunately through that. And then society sets it up, the porn industry, the sex workers set it up to keep them stuck in that thought process, in that sense of that identity, that false self, that unhealthy sense of identity that they have. So for those women that complain to those men that are just hypersexual and all they want is to objectify and whatever, they do not just want that. They may be hypersexual right now and they might not be aware, but they're in most likely a lot of pain that they're suppressing. And there's nothing more that they would want from you than to accept them for who they are. Even if their behavior is inappropriate, there's nothing more that they would want than to be desired for who they are, for their submission to be respected and desired, and just to be able to be themselves, because they live their whole life being afraid to be themselves. And so that's a situation for, I think, a decent amount of guys into male submission. And we can change that. We can start talking about this more. We can encourage men to look within and to start healing their their wounds. We can start having them flip the script and realize that there's nothing unmanly about their submission and that it's a beautiful thing, and that it depends what they do with it. And we can start talking about femdom in not just a sex crazed, way, and like a dark, dirty, perverse type of way to the world. And we can show the beautiful sides that definitely do exist, and the healing that can come from it, and the confidence and the pleasure and the intimacy, all those different things, instead of just monopolizing on all the hurt and all the insecurities and all the perversive, falsely portrayed of what femdom is. So until next video, hopefully we can do something with this video.